All right. In the meantime, I do want to go to Governor Josh Shapiro, the Pennsylvania governor, kind enough to join us. Governor, so much going on today. I did want to get your thoughts on these developments in the Middle East and a lot of this pressure that's on Israel now to go slow, don't have a dramatic response to this missile attack today. What do you think of that?
Well, look, let's speak truth. Iran is the world's largest exporter of terrorism. One of their proxies has been Hezbollah, who've been launching rockets and missiles toward Israel now for the better part of the last year. And today's really unprecedented, unprovoked attack by Iran is unacceptable, and it needs to be responded to. That'll be determined by others, certainly. But I think we need to be strong against Iran, and we need to be clear that Iran is a terrorist regime. Iran is not our friend. Iran is no one's friend in the peaceful world, and we've got to make sure that it is addressed.
So, you know, obviously we got the vice presidential debate tonight. Governor, a lot of people were hoping that you would be that vice presidential candidate in that debate. That's neither here nor there. I understand that. But this message coming today about now you have a port strike going on, you've got this turbulence in the Middle East again, that seems to be a constant, and that it's just a messy environment for debate where the Democratic candidate will be targeted. You are part of the problem, and you know how that goes. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah. Well, look, Neil, I would say there are serious challenges in the world, from overseas, as you and I spoke about at the beginning of this interview, to the port, which you just mentioned. And these are serious times. And I think it calls for serious people to conduct serious work every single day. I know you won't find this to be a shock. I don't think Donald Trump is a serious person. I don't think that he has serious ideas to deal with these serious challenges that we face. And so I think you'll probably see tonight in this vice presidential debate a clear contrast between the vision of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And I would hope that it would also be a reminder to people of the chaos that Donald Trump brought when he had the keys to the White House 4 years ago. I don't think we want to go back to that. Just the fact that there are challenges in the world doesn't mean that Donald Trump has the solutions. I think many of these challenges are as a result of Donald Trump's policies and things he set in motion, and we need serious people right now to address that.
I don't know. I think the alert here, Governor, is that you're not supporting Donald Trump, but thank you for clarifying that. But
by the way, that's the second alert of the day, Neil. I had no idea you were an intern for Jimmy Carter, so we both provided some breaking news today.
Indeed we did, and I show every year of that time. But let me ask you, Governor, while I have you, I always try to get a sense of the whole situation, our relationship with Israel. As you know, it's been tense at times at this administration and Benjamin Netanyahu, but Vice President Harris was saying on the stump today, I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself against Iran. So obviously, clearly supporting this effort to go after Iran, a response of some sort to this missile attack. But there was some chafing last week, as you recall, when Israel moved into the southern Lebanon to go after Hezbollah, take out the leader, and without apprising the U.S. of this, that it comes and goes. In other words, it's very tense. Do you think it's very tense?
Yeah, I'm not sure I see it that way. I think it is really important to distinguish between standing with Israel and certainly Israel's right to defend itself against this type of unprecedented aggression coming from Iran, a terrorist regime, and maybe some differences from the leadership that is in charge of Israel. And I think that there is a real stark difference there. I think it is one thing to stand up and say, to Bibi Netanyahu, I disagree with a particular position or approach you've taken, and a whole other thing to maybe not stand with Israel. And so that is why it is clear Vice President Harris has made clear she stands with Israel and has also, expressed some concerns that she has and the administration has with some of the conduct of the government that is in charge now. And I think it is important to distinguish between the two.
Governor, Donald Trump has said none of this would be happening right now if he were president. Not the unrest going on in the Middle East and not the Ukraine war. None of that if he were president. What do you think of that?
I understand why Donald Trump says that, to score political points, but there's actually no evidence to back up anything he claims for two reasons. Number one, when he was in charge, we had chaos at home and abroad. And second, he's offered absolutely no vision, no policy, no prescription for any of the challenges that we're seeing across the globe. I mean, just standing up and saying it wouldn't be happening if I was in charge is not an answer. And I think, quite frankly, statements like that, people have grown tired to. They've heard it from the beginning. All the big pronouncements he made about healthcare, all the big pronouncements he made on other things, none of them end up coming true because he doesn't have the plans, the policy chops, or the ability to get stuff done. And so I just think you're seeing more pontificating, more of him just kind of being a blowhard on these things.
Finally, I did want to get your take on fracking, a big issue in your state, sir. There have been inconsistent positions on the part of Kamala Harris, more friendly, more open to that now, very much opposed not too long ago. And I understand politics, and I understand trying to appeal to all types. But do you think that will boomerang on her in your state?
Well, Neil, let me tell you, I'm an all-of-the-above energy governor. I understand the critical role that natural gas plays in our economy today. We're proud to be a net energy exporter in Pennsylvania. We're proud of what it does for our economy. We're proud of what it does for our national security, being able to be energy independent. I'm proud of the fact that we're producing more energy than ever before in this nation. That's something that is a sign of strength, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the country. And I will tell you another sign of strength is that Kamala Harris over the last 4 or 5 years has listened to the good people of Pennsylvania, listened to others across this country, and recognized that she needed to shift her position on fracking, and to do so not for some political expediency, but because I think she listened and learned. I think listening and learning from people and changing your position as a result of that is a sign of political strength. And I'm pleased that Kamala Harris is going to strengthen our natural gas industry in Pennsylvania, and I'm pleased of her position that she's taken here in this campaign.
Governor, thank you very much. Very good having you on.
Thank you, Neil.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.